everybody, Spirited Teenager. And I've got a few clips to show you about the ridiculousness of what's going on. First clip is Ted Koppel, when he told the media they needed Donald Trump or else they'd do nothing with him. And that is so true. Second clip is Rudy Giuliani, and he knows, and he's got the evidence of Joe in Ukraine with Biden. Joe Biden with Hunter in Ukraine. And then One America has a little clip about how the Dems are just, abusing power, basically. And I've got another clip for you here with Doug Collins and Rhea on Fox, and they're discussing Pelosi and how ridiculous she is, and they're discussing that the IG report will be coming out soon. And then Trump, well, he's our hero. What else can I say about Donald Trump? He deserves to be there. He was voted in, and he's doing a terrific job for the U.S. as far as I'm concerned. And nobody else can do a better job than he can. So way to go, Donald. Keep going.
Former Nightline host Ted Koppel did something brave recently. He said something that was obviously true. During remarks to the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, Koppel said the press has abandoned objectivity and is now pursuing a political vendetta.
I'm terribly concerned that when you talk about the New York Times these days, when you talk about the Washington Post these days, we're not talking about the New York Times of 50 years ago. We are not talking about the Washington Post of 50 years ago. We're talking about organizations that I believe have, in fact, decided as organizations that Donald J. Trump is bad for the United States.
Fox senior political analyst Britt Hume worked with Ted Koppel for many years and joins us tonight. Britt, I don't think of Ted Koppel as a conservative figure at all, but he just said something that I think many on the left will hate. Is it true, and why did he say it, do you think?
I think it's unmistakably true, Tucker, and you're right. I did work with Ted Koppel for many years. He's old school, much as I am. We come out of the same tradition, which is neutrality in news coverage, opinions reserved for columnists and editorial writers. And in broadcast journalism, you have certain commentators and you have correspondents who cover the news. And those lines of separation have become increasingly blurred. And in the age of Trump, as Koppel suggested, they've gone completely out the window because of a sense among journalists that the election of Donald Trump constituted a national emergency, and it was their duty as patriots to resist it and to do all they could to undo this presidency, which they have assiduously, in my judgment, tried to do, and we see it reflected constantly.
I suppose what I find so infuriating about it is how indirect and dishonest it is. I mean, opinion people are pretty straightforward about it. We are on this show. Rachel Maddow, I'm not mad at Rachel Maddow. She says exactly who she is. There's no misleading anybody about being an opinion person. Why shouldn't news people who decide to become activists just say so out loud?
Well, I agree with that, but I think what happened here is that Watergate really is a factor here, because in that moment, which was the most exciting, the most extraordinary moment in modern journalistic history in the United States, these two young reporters that were seen as bringing down a president of the United States. We'd all been told that the Fourth Estate was powerful and so forth, but none of us had ever seen anything like this. This was truly remarkable. It was glamorous. They were celebrated in movies. They were the subject of endless books and so on, and it was an extraordinary moment, and it created an atmosphere in which I think journalists want to relive that. And here comes a target.
Welcome back, and I am back with President Trump's personal attorney, former New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani. There are testimonies that are going to be coming. We know that the Democrats are looking for Bill Barr to recuse himself. They are looking to subpoena. They have subpoenaed Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Have you gotten subpoenaed? Are you expecting to testify? What's next?
I have not been subpoenaed. When I am, or if they call me and ask me if I would testify voluntarily, I'll take that matter up with my client. I mean, they forget about the fact, because they have no regard for constitutional rights, and they treat President Trump as if he has no constitutional rights. I'm his attorney. There's something called attorney-client privilege. That has to be considered, even if they don't think he should have attorney-client privilege. Would I be willing to explain this openly? And did anybody do anything wrong? Absolutely not. The only thing done wrong here is the cover-up of these charges for 3 years that are very, very serious. These are very serious charges, and they're backed up by sworn affidavits, and they're online. And the Washington press corps trying to protect a Biden like they protected Clinton. And beyond that, the pattern is a pattern of pay for play. It includes something very similar to what happened with the Clinton Foundation, which goes to the very core of what did Obama know and when did he know it? In December of 2015, the New York Times wrote an article, scathing criticism of Biden for putting his son in this conflicted position and compromising his ability to deal with corruption, which, by the way, should be a concern of a future. Should be a concern of a future president. Question is, when Biden and Obama saw that article about how the son was pulling down money for the most crooked oligarch in Russia, did Obama call Biden in and say, Joe, how could you be doing this?
Yeah, I understand that. But
did he have any control?
The reality is that the Democrats have the majority in the House. That means they have subpoena power. That means they are running the show. What are you going to do about this? The fact that there was wrongdoing done in early 2016, they're refusing to look at.
It would be nice if I say to my fellow Republicans, it would be nice, instead of attacking me, the messenger, without knowing what really is involved, that you give me the benefit of the doubt before you attack me, and you take a look at what I have.
Right.
How about don't we have hearings? I mean, suppose it was alleged that Donald Trump Jr. got $8 million from a crooked oligarch in Ukraine. How long would it take for the Democrats to investigate us? And how long would it take for the Washington Post and the New York Times to have glaring headlines? And until we cure that, we're going to be a divided country. And until our Republican friends realize that we're really not in bad faith, that this is really serious, and that I am concerned, as I have been from the time I was an assistant U.S. attorney, I find the sale of public office to be disgusting. And they weren't hiring Hunter Biden. There are 100 reasons why they weren't hiring, including the fact that he's a troubled young man who shouldn't have been put in that position. They were buying Joe Biden. And if he didn't see that, then he's blind. And if Obama didn't deal with it, then he is not the kind of president Donald Trump is, who takes Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution seriously. And maybe these Republicans should give him and me the benefit of the doubt.
Did President Trump hold back aid to Ukraine because he wanted them to investigate Joe Biden and his son?
Isn't the best answer to that the telephone conversation? Although the Democrats said that falsely before it came out, and Schiff pretended that he did in that ridiculously falsified thing that he did at the beginning. Look at the transcript. Is there any mention of military aid? No. Did he hold back the aid? No.
Did you work with other lawyers?
I have never, in my discussion.
Did you work with other lawyers, Victoria Tunsing, Joseph DeGeneva, to try to get dirt on Joe Biden?
No. I didn't work with anybody to try to get dirt on Joe Biden. The dirt on Joe Biden was handed to me by the Ukrainians, amazed that the FBI hadn't asked for this a year earlier, completely shocked and worried that our system of justice was flawed because Joe Biden announced it publicly. And if you're a lawyer at all, what Joe Biden announced was he offered something of value, $1.2 billion loan guarantee, in order to get the prosecutor to take official action. That's the crime of bribery. And the motive is, if you at least interview the guy, to cover up the case on his son. There were also, by the way, I believe 3 other affidavits of different prosecutors, some of them not friendly to this prosecutor, saying the same thing. Now, that's what we have investigations for. But that's a lot more evidence.
But, Rudy, the bottom line is you're not getting that on the Democrat side, and they are in charge.
But what are you going to do to get? I care about the American people.
But they know what went on in the origins of the Russia probe, and you're not. Where are the indictments? Where are the prosecutions for the people who actually did wrongdoing in the 2016 election, who tried to frame Donald Trump?
That's a very good question.
Where are they? Have you spoken to Bill Barr about this?
Where is this? That is a very good question. And that's a question you should keep asking. And the reality is, before they start criticizing me, the question should be, what have they done about it? Where's the Republican Senate investigating extremely serious charges about the former vice president, who I know is a member of the club, but members of the club don't get to put their sons in positions where they make millions and millions and millions, where you have to be an idiot not to know the son was trading on the father's public office.
Well,
that is disgusting.
I've been asking the question about China. I've been asking the question about China for a long time now. The fact that Hunter Biden got $1.5 billion from the Bank of China after he took that ride on Air Force Two with Vice President Biden.
Now, China, I have to say, I didn't investigate. I don't have the affidavits.
Okay.
Here, I have all the proof.
Yep.
What I understand about China is he was actually in a partnership with the Bank of China and with Whitey Bulger's nephew. Now, if you're not going to investigate that, if the Republicans don't have enough courage to investigate that, then we're not really even representing the American people effectively. Yeah. The overriding reason for doing this is, if a vice president did this and compromised us in China and in Ukraine.
Yep.
Now, the Chinese government knows why they gave the money. They weren't hiring Hunter Biden's expertise. They were buying Joe Biden. And by the way, for the price of that, they also got John Kerry's stepson. Coincidental?
Yeah,
they
no,
took the
I
money
know
there?
China's ways, and we reported that and reported it.
You can't just say, we're not going to look at that because he's one of our guys. He's part of the club.
You made your point. Rudy Giuliani, it is good to have you this morning.
It's so similar to the Clinton
Thank you.
Foundation that there's a pattern here of pay for play. And I'm not going to be silent about it because they intimidate me.
We will
They're
leave it
trying to
there.
intimidate me. They can intimidate me all they want. And the reality is, this is because I represent the President of the United States. I want to show that he's innocent. And I have to admit, I'm disgusted by what I see, and I'm worried about my country having a double standard.
We will leave it there. Rudy Giuliani, thank you.
You have extensive experience in this area. Not only were you a CIA analyst for many years, you also worked on the National Security Council. Talk to me about the tone of this complaint. You saw problems in the tone, correct?
Well, I'll tell you, this was the strangest whistleblowing complaint I've ever seen. I've seen a bunch of them at the CIA and the House Intelligence Committee staff. It looked like a law professor wrote it. And I mean, you know, you and I know how to use footnotes, but lawyers use them in a certain way. This had the detailed type of footnote that, frankly, a judge or a law firm would use. And that's what Jay Sekulow said today, one of the president's attorneys. But what's disturbed me even more than that, I mean, that suggested that there was outside help. The subject matter of this complaint, that is that the president allegedly put pressure on the Ukrainian government to go after Joe Biden and his son. Adam Schiff was saying exactly the same thing last month, and Schiff sent a tweet at the end of August. It was identical to this complaint. Now, I've talked to a member and a staff member of the House Intelligence Committee, and they agree with me. It looks like there was outside help in writing this whistleblower complaint, and that outside help may have come from the Democrats on the House Intelligence Committee, and I think certainly their attorneys.
So would this mean, in your opinion, that Adam Schiff was essentially lying to the American people when he claimed that he hadn't seen this? Do you believe there's reason to think that Schiff had, in fact, heard about this, if not read it himself?
Well, it seems awfully coincidental that Schiff is talking about this very issue for weeks before a whistleblowing complaint that he supposedly never knew nothing about fell in his lap. And I should tell you that a lot of whistleblowers and people who are disgruntled in the intelligence community, they come directly to the intelligence committees. They're not supposed to. But I was on the intelligence committee staff. People came to see me all the time from the intelligence community. They'd talk to me, they'd give me documents, they'd call me without telling their bosses. I think that happened here.
Interesting. I guess the only way to get to the bottom of this would be to ask the whistleblower himself under oath if he told the Democrats or Congress or who helped him formulate the complaint. I don't know how else we'd get to the bottom of that.
That's right. And frankly, the Republican members of the Intelligence Committee, they are anxious to do that, to put this guy under oath and say, who helped you write this complaint? You didn't write it yourself. You're a political analyst at the CIA. You're not an attorney. You obviously didn't write that. I couldn't write this memo, and I use footnotes in writing that I've done. This is very advanced legalese, and It could be this guy had an attorney working with him at the CIA, but in addition to that, we had to explain why it is he wrote a whistleblowing complaint on something that Adam Schiff was already pushing to the news media.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi announcing the start of an impeachment inquiry into whether President Trump abused his power when he asked Ukraine's president to look into a political rival. Joining us right now is Georgia Republican Congressman Doug Collins. He is the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee in the House. Sir, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, Maria, it's always good to be with you.
You just heard my conversation with Rudy Giuliani, I hope. Give us your reaction to this inquiry into impeachment.
Well, first off, let's start. Rudy is a passionate defender of this president. I mean, he's watched this president be attacked for over 3 years, and he is simply doing what an attorney is supposed to do, and he's presenting that. That's his job. But let me go back to what's going on in the House and where this is at right now. This week, we saw a dark day in the House. We saw Speaker Pelosi abuse her oath of office, if you would, by abusing the role of the Speaker by saying an impeachment inquiry had started, and they were sending it to the Intelligence Committee, where you have a gentleman who has a habit of lying about the facts, Mr. Schiff. And what that means is, though, is they've decided to walk down a path in which they are contrary to American values. They're not going to allow this president to have due process. They're not going to be fair. They're going to ramrod this thing through because, as I heard a member of House leadership this morning say on another network, that he wanted to have an inquiry, but he wasn't ready to vote for impeachment. The reason is, if they were truly serious about that, they would bring it to the floor, they would have a vote, and then there would be fairness, and the American people can know that this was not just simply a Democrat ramrod of this president. That's the problem we're seeing right now.
So what does that mean, though? I mean, what does that mean for this impeachment inquiry? Where does this go? Is the president in jeopardy of being removed from office?
No, he's not in jeopardy of being removed from office. He's in jeopardy of having to continue the onslaught of lies and attacks and half-truths from a one-sided investigation in the House. This is something, from my position as ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, all you've had to watch is our committee completely fall apart under investigation. In fact, anytime they've been we've allowed to have investigations, whether it be the Mueller report or these ridiculous hearings that Chairman Nadler's had in Judiciary Committee, it has always tended to is shown that the president has done nothing wrong, that the collusion was a false narrative, that the conspiracies, all these things were false when you actually investigate. So now they've decided, let's throw that out the window because that's not working for us. Fairness is not working. Being on the right side of the American people is not all right. So we're just going to ramrod it through. That's what's happening right now.
Look, I want to ask you about the whistleblower and the rules around a whistleblower. We know that in the actual transcript, we see that, in the actual complaint, rather, the whistleblower says, I do not have direct knowledge of this. That is in the complaint. But I was told this, and I trust the people who told me. What are the rules around the whistleblower in terms of what that person can charge?
Well, that's what's really been interesting here in the last little bit, because we've been finding out that the whistleblower rules, especially in the intelligence community, seem to have been changed. And they've been changed from requiring and demanding a first-hand account or an actual knowledge, first-hand knowledge of the abuse or the misuse of issues in the intelligence community, to now where they could have second-hand information. If you look at the whistleblower report, even besides the transcript and everything else, comparing the two is really interesting because it seems to be a very well-written document, multi-sourced. If this was a piece for the New York Times or the Washington Post, that might be what you expect. But you don't expect this in what comes to form as a legal document accusing a president of doing something in a illegal fashion and doing so from second-hand information. Now, as we go forward here, is that going to be the standard that has been changed now in the intelligence community to where basically anybody there can take any report that they want to over the water cooler or wherever and decided to file a complaint? This is more serious than this. This president and our country deserves better than what we're seeing right here.
They may deserve better, but Congressman, that's not what's happening. The Democrats are in charge, and they are going to be investigating this, and they want the president out of office. What are you going to do about it as the ranking member of Judiciary?
Well, it's been a really interesting week because it seems like the Judiciary Committee is, again, in this ramrod that Speaker Pelosi, and frankly, just degradation of the House rules, is saying now, well, we're going to do an inquiry with not being an inquiry into Intelligence Committee. We're going to keep following the rules, but we're also going to say this. In just the next few weeks, I think we're going to see the Inspector General report of the Department of Justice come out. We're going to go back to the real area that we need to be concentrating on here, is how this actually got started. Hopefully the Senate will be having hearings, and I know Lindsey Graham will be doing that, and we'll be looking at this, and they're going to have to deal with an entire entire picture. They're rushing to judgment, Maria. Keep this clearly in mind. They're rushing to judgment because they know time is running out, and they're desperate for this president not to win next year. This is the derangement syndrome in the House right now.
Are we going to see indictments, prosecutions of the people who did the wrongdoing coming out of the FISA abuse story and after the IG report? Where is the accountability?
Listen. Well, the accountability, I think, is coming. You see all of the major players are continuing to scramble, making up stories on how they were really just doing their job. It sounds very similar to, oh, I didn't do anything, don't look over here. I think Bill Barr, the Inspector General, Mr. Durham are all looking into this, and I do believe that this is coming, and this accountability will happen. We've been talking about it a long time, but it's time to stop the harassment of this president. It's time for the House to do what they need to be doing, and that is get back to the people's business.
Congressman, thank you so much. We so appreciate your time. I'm looking forward to having you once again come back soon. Thank you, sir.
All right, Mayor, take care.
What's going on now is the single greatest scam in the history of American politics. The Democrats want to take away your guns. They want to take away your health care. They want to take away your vote. They want to take away your freedom. They want to take away your judges. They want to take away everything. We can never let this happen. We're fighting to drain the swamp, and that's exactly what I'm doing. And you see why we have to do it. Because our country is at stake like never before. It's all very simple. They're trying to stop me because I'm fighting for you, and I'll never let that happen.
Now in that swamp there in D.C., there's corruption like you wouldn't believe. Those crooked politicians keep cheating the people like you and me. They just lay there in that swamp the way they've done for years. Taking our money, our blood, sweat and tears. Drain the swamp, drain the swamp, drain that swamp, drain the swamp. This job's gonna take more than a broom and a mop. Drain the swamp, drain the swamp, drain that swamp, drain the swamp. Hey, Mr. Trump, I said, hey, President Trump. Hey, Mr. Trump, drain the swamp. This is Cadillac Dan the Man Jones here on the scene, at the scene for PNN Fake News Network. Excuse me, sir, did anyone see what happened here? Yeah, I did. Those career politicians were laying there in that swamp like they've done for years. Lying and cheating and stealing from the American people. And the working man and woman said it was time for it to stop. So they went to the polls by the millions and elected Donald J. Trump as president and sent him here to drain this dang swamp. I tell you, it ain't pretty.
What these guys are doing, Democrats are doing to this country, is a disgrace, and it shouldn't be allowed. There should be a way of stopping it, maybe legally through the courts. It's a disgrace to our country. It's another witch hunt. Here we go again. It's Adam Schiff and his crew making up stories and sitting there like pious, whatever you want to call them. It's just really a disgrace. It's a terrible thing for our country. They can't do any work. They're frozen, the Democrats. They're going to lose the election. They know it. That's why they're doing it. And it should never be allowed what's happened to this president. They don't want to talk about infrastructure. They don't want to talk about lowering drug prices. They don't want to talk about anything because they're fixated on this. And Nancy Pelosi has been hijacked by the radical left.
Drain the swamp, drain the swamp, drain that swamp. This job's gonna take more than a broom and a mop. Drain the swamp, drain the swamp, drain that swamp. Hey, Mr. Trump, I said, hey, President Trump. Hey, Mr. Trump, drain the swamp. Drain the swamp, drain the swamp, drain that swamp. This job's gonna take drain that swamp. Hey, I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, or Independent. All you Washington fat cats, I'm gonna enjoy seeing you slide down the drain. Hey, Mr. President, I got my hand at a 45 and I'm standing to my feet to salute that American flag. God bless the USA.